The girl had always loved music. She would sit quietly in the corner of the living room, watching her older siblings play games or watch television, while she hummed little tunes to herself. The piano in the corner of the room had been there for years, but she had rarely touched it. Her fingers would hover over the keys, sometimes pressing one or two, creating sounds that made her smile. She dreamed of playing full songs one day, but it seemed impossible. Everyone around her was so confident and talented, and she was just a quiet girl with a lot of dreams and very little experience. One day, the school announced a talent show. Students were encouraged to show any skill they had, whether it was singing, dancing, acting, or playing an instrument. The girl's heart skipped a beat. She had never performed in front of anyone except her family, and even that made her nervous. Still, she felt a spark of excitement. Maybe this was the chance she had been waiting for. She wanted to play the piano. She wanted everyone to hear the music she had always imagined in her mind. At lunch, she nervously approached a few classmates she thought might be supportive. She took a deep breath and said, "I want to play the piano for the talent show." Her words were met with silence at first. Then some giggles. One of the louder kids whispered, "You? Play the piano? That's going to be funny." Her cheeks burned. She looked down at her tray and tried to ignore the laughter. But inside, a small voice whispered doubt into her ear. Maybe they were right. Maybe she wasn't good enough. But another part of her, a stronger part, refused to let them win. She had wanted this for so long, and no amount of laughter could take that away. She spent the next few days watching videos online, trying to see how others played. She noticed small things. How the fingers moved, how the body sat, how the music flowed from the piano. Every evening, she would go to the corner of the living room and try to imitate what she had seen. First, it was messy. She hit wrong keys, forgot notes, and sometimes just laughed at herself. But slowly, day by day, she started to feel a connection between her fingers and the keys. The sounds became smoother, the notes began to form melodies, and she realized that maybe, just maybe, she could do this. Her parents noticed her growing interest and practice. They encouraged her quietly, offering small tips and clapping when she played something that sounded right. They did not push her or demand perfection. They simply gave her the confidence that she could believe in herself. Every small nod of approval gave her a little more courage. At school, the laughter had not completely stopped. Some classmates still whispered and snickered when they heard she wanted to perform. But others began to look at her differently, curious about what she could do. Even though the girl felt nervous, she decided not to pay attention to the doubters. She focused on what she loved, the piano and the music she could create. One afternoon, the girl stayed after class to sit at the school piano. The hall was quiet. The echo of the keys felt like a small stage just for her. She pressed a key and felt a shiver run through her. It was as if the piano itself was alive, listening to her, waiting for her to tell a story with music. Slowly, she started playing a simple tune she had been practicing. At first, it was hesitant, but as she continued, the music flowed more naturally. Her heart raced, but she felt alive in a way she had never felt before. She thought about the talent show. The idea of standing on stage in front of everyone was terrifying, but the piano made her forget her fear. It reminded her why she wanted to do this in the first place. Music was not about laughter or doubt. It was about expression, about sharing a piece of yourself with the world. The girl started to imagine the day of the show. She saw herself sitting at the piano, the lights on her, the audience watching. She imagined the first note, the second, and then the entire song flowing effortlessly. She imagined their faces changing from doubt to surprise, to admiration. It was a powerful vision, one that made her heart beat faster with excitement rather than fear. Back at home, she practiced whenever she could. She woke up early to touch the keys before anyone else was awake. She practiced after school when the house was quiet. She learned to be patient with herself, understanding that every mistake was just a step toward improvement. Her hands became more confident, her mind more focused, and her spirit stronger. She also began to imagine her story, not just the music. She imagined telling the audience that she had been laughed at, that people had doubted her, and yet she chose to follow her heart. It was not just a performance, it was a statement, a story of courage, persistence, and belief in oneself. The day of the first rehearsal in the school auditorium arrived. The girl felt nervous but ready. She walked onto the stage, sat at the piano, and took a deep breath. The keys felt familiar under her fingers. The first note rang out, trembling slightly at first, but as she continued, the music found its rhythm. Even though there were only a few people in the rehearsal audience, she felt their eyes on her, felt the weight of the moment. But rather than fear, she felt determination. She would not let anyone's laughter stop her. She had worked too hard, and she loved the music too much. By the end of the practice, the girl was smiling. She had played through the piece, and even with mistakes, it sounded beautiful. She knew she had come a long way from the girl who had quietly hummed tunes in the corner of the living room. She was not just learning to play the piano. She was learning to believe in herself, to trust her abilities, and to stand strong even when others doubted her. As she walked home that afternoon, she thought about the talent show once more. She felt a mix of excitement and nerves, but mostly she felt ready. Ready to show the world that laughter and doubt could not stop someone who truly believed in themselves. She knew the journey was just beginning, and she was prepared to face whatever came next. The music inside her was ready to be heard, and nothing, not even laughter, could silence it. After the first day of rehearsals, the girl returned home with a new determination. She knew she had a lot to learn, and she also knew that the talent show was approaching fast. Every day, she set aside time to practice, sometimes for hours, sitting at the piano in the quiet corner of her room. The notes started to feel less like obstacles and more like friends guiding her hands. She discovered that the music was not just about the right keys but about how she felt while playing. Each note carried a piece of her heart, and she began to pour emotion into every song she practiced. She made a small plan for herself. Each day she would focus on one part of the piece that felt tricky, repeating it over and over until it felt natural. At first, the mistakes were frustrating. Her fingers would stumble, her timing would be off, and sometimes she just could not get the melody to sound like it did in her head. She thought about giving up more than once. But every time she felt doubt, she remembered the laughter from school, the looks of disbelief, and she told herself that this was her chance to prove them wrong. Not for them, but for herself. She also began keeping a small journal, writing down what she practiced each day and what she wanted to improve. Some days, she wrote about her frustration. Other days, she wrote about small victories when a section finally sounded right. This simple act helped her see progress she might have otherwise missed. She noticed that each practice session, no matter how small, made her a little stronger, a little more confident. Her parents watched quietly from the doorway sometimes, offering smiles and gentle encouragement. They did not pressure her, but they did celebrate the little improvements. They noticed when she hit a sequence of notes perfectly or when she seemed more confident in her movements. Their support was like a warm light that followed her even when school was harsh and the laughter from classmates still echoed in her mind. Sometimes, she would go outside and practice on an imaginary piano in the air, moving her fingers across the keys with perfect precision. Neighbors would see her fingers moving and think she was dancing or just playing. But in reality, she was rehearsing the motions, the gestures, and the feeling of performing. She learned that the music was not only in the sound but also in her body and mind, preparing herself to be fully present when the time came. Her mentor, a retired music teacher who lived nearby, noticed her dedication. The teacher had once been a performer and had seen many children give up too early. One day, the teacher invited her over for a short lesson. They talked about technique, rhythm, and expression, but most importantly, the teacher shared stories of times when others had doubted them. The girl listened carefully, feeling inspired. She realized that even the most skilled performers had faced criticism, and what mattered was that they kept going. With the teacher's guidance, she began to focus not just on playing the notes correctly, but on telling a story with her music. Each song became a journey, each melody a conversation between her and the listener. She practiced slowly at first, then gradually increased the tempo, learning to control her speed and dynamics. She experimented with volume, emphasizing certain notes and softening others to create emotion. She began to understand that music was alive and that her fingers were the medium through which it spoke. The days passed quickly. Each evening, the girl would sit at her piano and imagine the day of the talent show. She pictured the audience, the lights, the stage, and even the laughter that would greet her request. But now, instead of fear, she felt excitement. She knew that when she performed, the music would speak louder than the doubts, and she wanted to experience that moment fully. She practiced imagining the applause, the smiles, and even the shock on the faces of those who had doubted her. Her confidence grew, but she also faced moments of insecurity. Sometimes she would stumble over a section of the music, or forget a note in the middle of a phrase. In those moments, she would take a deep breath and remind herself that mistakes were part of learning. She learned to treat mistakes as lessons, not failures. Each time she corrected an error, she felt a little stronger, a little more prepared. She began to trust herself more and more, realizing that her dedication and practice were paying off. The girl also began to notice changes in how others saw her. Some classmates who had laughed now watched her quietly, curious about her progress. They would ask small questions about what she was learning or compliment a note she played beautifully during practice sessions. It was not everyone, and some still doubted her, but she did not let that distract her. She had learned that the opinions of others mattered less than her own determination and love for music. One rainy afternoon, she decided to challenge herself by performing the entire piece from memory. She cleared the living room, imagining it as the stage, and sat at the piano. Her fingers hovered over the keys, and she closed her eyes, feeling the music in her mind. Slowly, she began to play. The melody filled the room, and she noticed how the sound seemed to flow naturally, no longer forced or hesitant. When she finished, she felt a rush of pride and relief. She had done it. She had played an entire piece without stopping, without mistakes, from her heart. This small victory gave her courage. She started to imagine telling her story to others, sharing the journey from being laughed at to performing confidently. She felt a deep sense of purpose. Music was no longer just a hobby or a dream. It had become a way to express herself, to show that determination and passion could overcome doubt and ridicule. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was her voice. With each passing day, she balanced practice with normal life, schoolwork, and family time. She learned discipline and patience, understanding that success was not instant but built slowly with effort. She also learned resilience, that even when people laughed or doubted her, she could continue to grow and improve. The piano became her companion, a friend who never judged, never laughed, and always encouraged her to keep going. As the talent show drew closer, the girl began to feel ready. She had spent weeks preparing, practicing, and imagining herself on stage. She had faced moments of doubt, frustration, and even fear, but she had overcome them all. She knew that when she finally performed, it would not just be about playing the piano. It would be about sharing her story, her dedication, and her love for music. And most importantly, it would be about proving to herself that she was capable of achieving something that once seemed impossible. Evening after evening, she continued to practice, refining every note, every pause, every expression. The music became more than just sound. It became her identity, her courage, and her story. She felt ready for whatever awaited her on the stage. The laughter that once made her hesitate now felt distant, almost irrelevant. She was prepared to show that her passion, dedication, and love for music could overcome any doubt or ridicule. The girl had transformed from a quiet dreamer into a confident musician, ready to take the next step in her journey. The day of the talent show finally arrived. The girl woke up early, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nerves. She had dreamed of this moment for weeks, had prepared for every note and every pause, but nothing could fully prepare her for the real stage. She dressed carefully, choosing simple clothes that allowed her to move freely at the piano. Every step she took felt heavy with anticipation, yet light with hope. She kept reminding herself that she had practiced, that she was ready, and that this was her chance to share her music. When she arrived at the school auditorium, she was greeted by a flurry of activity. Students were setting up decorations, teachers were organizing the program, and parents were quietly finding seats. The energy in the air was both exciting and intimidating. She could hear other performers warming up, voices singing, fingers strumming instruments, and the occasional nervous laugh. Her hands felt slightly sweaty, but she took a deep breath and focused on her music, imagining herself sitting at the piano and letting her fingers tell the story. Backstage, she waited nervously as other students performed. Some received applause, some giggles, and some encouragement from their friends. She tried not to watch too closely, knowing that her moment would come soon enough. She closed her eyes for a moment, recalling the weeks of practice, the quiet afternoons at home, and the small victories that had built her confidence. She reminded herself that no matter what happened, she had worked hard, and that was something to be proud of. When her name was announced, the laughter and whispers she had feared seemed to creep back into her mind. Some students still remembered her request to play the piano and smiled or whispered doubtfully. She walked toward the stage with careful steps, feeling the weight of all eyes on her. The lights were bright, and for a moment, she felt frozen, imagining everyone watching her every move. But then she took a deep breath, sat at the piano, and let her hands rest gently on the keys. The first note she played trembled slightly, betraying her nervousness, but she did not stop. She pressed the next key, then another, and slowly the music began to flow. The melody she had practiced so many times in her room came alive in the auditorium. She felt the music in her chest, her arms, and her fingers. It was as if the piano and she were one, telling a story together. The initial whispers faded, replaced by the sound of her own music filling the space. As she continued, she noticed a change in the audience. Some students who had doubted her looked surprised, their eyes widening as they realized she was playing beautifully. Parents leaned forward, listening intently, and even teachers smiled, impressed by her skill and confidence. The girl felt a surge of courage. Each note she played grew stronger, more expressive, and more confident. She let herself get lost in the music, forgetting about the nerves and the audience, focusing only on the story she was telling through her fingers. Her fingers moved faster, yet remained precise, guided by hours of practice and determination. She emphasized certain notes, softened others, and allowed the melody to rise and fall like a wave. The music was no longer just a sequence of notes. It was a reflection of her heart, her dedication, and her courage. For the first time, she truly felt the power of her own voice through the piano. It was a moment of pure connection between her and the music, and between her and everyone listening. The laughter that had once echoed in her mind was gone. In its place was awe and admiration. The students who had doubted her now watched silently, captivated by the skill and emotion in her performance. Parents and teachers nodded, some smiling, some quietly moved by the unexpected talent of the quiet girl who had asked to play. She had transformed in their eyes from someone to be laughed at to someone whose dedication and talent demanded respect. As she approached the final notes, she felt a rush of emotion. Her hands moved with confidence, her heart pounded with excitement, and her mind felt clear and focused. The last chord echoed through the auditorium, lingering in the air like a story told perfectly. For a brief moment, there was complete silence, and then the audience erupted into applause. The girl looked up, surprised and overjoyed. People were clapping, some were cheering, and even a few students who had mocked her earlier looked genuinely impressed. She stood up from the piano, her hands shaking slightly but her heart soaring. The music had not only silenced the doubters but had also shown her own strength. She felt proud, not just because of the applause, but because she had faced her fear, taken a risk, and shared her passion. She realized that the journey, the practice, and the courage it took to perform were far more important than any reaction from others. Backstage, she was greeted by supportive smiles and warm words from her parents and a few kind classmates. Her mentor, who had helped her along the way, nodded with pride, knowing that she had not only played a beautiful piece, but had also discovered the power within herself. The girl felt a sense of accomplishment that went beyond the music. She had proven to herself that dedication, courage, and belief in her abilities could overcome doubt and ridicule. Later that evening, as she walked home, she replayed the performance in her mind. She remembered the nervousness, the first trembling note, the flow of the melody, and the final chord. She realized that the music had become a part of her story, a story of perseverance, courage, and the joy of following her passion. She understood that the laughter and doubt she had faced were just obstacles, and that facing them had made her stronger. She also thought about the future. This performance was just the beginning, a first step in a journey that could take her to many stages, many audiences, and many experiences. She felt excited to continue learning, practicing, and growing as a musician. The talent show had given her confidence, but more importantly, it had given her a vision of what she could achieve with dedication and courage. That night, as she lay in bed, the girl felt a sense of peace. She knew that she had faced her fear, shared her passion, and discovered her own strength. The piano, once a quiet corner in her room, had become a powerful voice for her dreams. She drifted off to sleep imagining the music, imagining herself performing again, and imagining the endless possibilities that awaited her. She had learned a valuable lesson. When you believe in yourself and follow your passion, even laughter and doubt cannot stop you. After the talent show, the girl's life felt a little different. The experience had given her a sense of confidence that she had never felt before. At school, the whispers and laughter that once followed her request to play the piano had mostly disappeared. Some students still looked surprised when they saw her, but now the looks were often mixed with curiosity and admiration. Her peers started asking questions about the music, wanting to know how she had practiced and what inspired her. It was a subtle change, but it made her feel recognized and respected for her dedication. The girl continued to practice every day, her love for the piano growing stronger. She no longer practiced just to prepare for performances. She practiced because she loved the sound of the music and the way it made her feel. She explored new songs, experimented with different styles, and allowed herself to play freely without worrying about mistakes. The piano had become a place where she could express her emotions, her dreams, and her thoughts in a way words never could. Her parents noticed the change in her attitude. She seemed more confident, more focused, and happier than before. They encouraged her to keep pursuing her passion, reminding her that her music could inspire others. Sometimes they would sit quietly in the room while she played, letting the notes fill the house. They never interrupted or gave unsolicited advice. They simply listened and supported her. This quiet encouragement helped her grow even more, allowing her to trust herself and her abilities. The girl also began to reflect on the journey she had taken. She remembered the first time she asked to play the piano and the laughter that followed. She thought about the long hours of practice, the mistakes she had made, and the small victories that had built her confidence. Each memory reminded her of how far she had come and how much she had grown. She realized that the talent show was not just about performing for others. It was about discovering her own strength and resilience. One day, her music teacher approached her with a new opportunity. There was a local music competition coming up, and the teacher thought she might be ready to participate. The girl felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She knew this would be another challenge, another stage, and another chance to face her fears. But she also felt ready. She had already experienced the thrill of performing and the joy of sharing her music, and she wanted to continue that journey. She accepted the challenge and began preparing for the competition. This time, she set higher goals for herself. She chose a more complex piece, one that required careful attention to rhythm, expression, and technique. She knew it would be difficult, but she welcomed the challenge. She spent hours practicing, breaking the piece into small sections, and perfecting each one. The process was sometimes frustrating, but it also brought her a sense of accomplishment with every improvement. Her mentor continued to guide her, offering advice on posture, hand movements, and expression. They encouraged her to focus on telling a story with the music, not just playing the notes correctly. The girl began to understand that the true power of music lay in its ability to communicate emotions, to touch hearts, and to create connections. She practiced not just for the audience but for herself, feeling the music deeply and allowing it to guide her performance. As the day of the competition approached, the girl felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. She had performed before, but this was a larger stage with more experienced participants. She reminded herself that every performer had a unique journey and that she had already overcome doubt and laughter before. She focused on her preparation, her practice, and the joy of playing, knowing that these were more important than any result. On the day of the competition, she arrived early to familiarize herself with the stage. The auditorium was larger than the school stage she had performed on, with bright lights and a more formal setting. She felt the nerves creeping in but took a deep breath and reminded herself of all the practice and dedication that had brought her here. She imagined the piano keys beneath her fingers, the melodies flowing from her heart, and the music reaching the audience. When her turn came, she walked confidently to the piano, sat down, and placed her hands on the keys. The first note sounded steady and clear. She continued, allowing the music to flow naturally, her fingers moving with precision and grace. The melody filled the auditorium, and she felt a sense of calm and focus that surprised her. She was no longer just playing the notes. She was expressing herself, sharing her journey, and connecting with the audience through the music. The audience responded with quiet attention, listening to every note, every pause, and every subtle change in tone. She noticed the expressions on their faces, the way they leaned forward slightly, captivated by the music. The nervousness she had felt moments ago transformed into joy and excitement. She realized that performing was not just about being seen. It was about sharing a part of herself and allowing others to experience the emotion behind the music. As she reached the final notes, she felt a rush of accomplishment. The piece had flowed beautifully, every note carefully played, every emotion conveyed. When the last chord echoed through the auditorium, there was a moment of silence, followed by enthusiastic applause. The girl stood, her heart racing with happiness and pride. She had faced another challenge, performed with passion and confidence, and connected with her audience in a meaningful way. After the performance, she received praise and encouragement from teachers, fellow participants, and even judges. They commented on her technique, her expression, and the emotion she brought to the music. She felt proud not just of the applause but of the journey that had led her here. Every moment of practice, every challenge overcome, and every small victory had contributed to this achievement. She realized that her music was not just about talent, but about dedication, perseverance, and the courage to pursue her dreams. The girl also reflected on the impact her journey might have on others. She thought about students who had laughed when she first requested to play the piano, and she realized that her perseverance could inspire them to pursue their own passions, no matter the doubt or ridicule they faced. She understood that music was not only a personal journey but also a way to influence and motivate others. Her experience had taught her the value of persistence, the importance of believing in oneself, and the joy of sharing one's passion. As she returned home that evening, the girl felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had performed on a larger stage, faced her fears, and expressed herself through music in a way that felt authentic and powerful. She knew that this was only the beginning, and many more performances, challenges, and opportunities awaited her. But for now, she allowed herself to enjoy the moment, to feel proud of her accomplishments, and to embrace the joy that music brought into her life. She practiced that night as well, not out of obligation but out of love for the piano. She explored new melodies, experimented with dynamics, and let her emotions guide her fingers. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a voice, a friend, and a source of joy. She understood that every note she played was a part of her story, a reflection of her journey, and a testament to her determination and courage. The girl realized that the laughter she had faced initially was no longer important. It had served as a challenge that pushed her to grow, to practice harder, and to believe in herself. The music had become a way to transform doubt into strength, ridicule into motivation, and fear into confidence. She knew that the piano would continue to be a central part of her life, guiding her, inspiring her, and allowing her to share her passion with the world. And with each practice, each performance, and each note played, she felt a little stronger, a little more confident, and a little closer to the dreams she had always imagined. After the music competition, the girl felt a new sense of freedom. She had faced her fears, performed in front of an audience, and received recognition for her talent. The applause and praise had been wonderful, but more importantly, she realized that the journey she had taken, the practice, the mistakes, the determination, had transformed her confidence and self-belief. She walked through the school halls differently now, with a quiet strength and pride in her stride. Even students who had once laughed at her request to play the piano now looked at her with curiosity and respect. She continued to practice every day, but now the practice had a different feel. It was no longer just preparation for a performance. Each note, each melody, each pause became a personal expression of her emotions and experiences. She explored new styles of music, tried improvisation, and sometimes composed her own simple tunes. The piano became not only an instrument but a companion, a place to express joy, sadness, excitement, and curiosity. It was a private world that she could always enter, where her thoughts and feelings could take shape in sound. Her family remained her greatest support. They celebrated her successes quietly but meaningfully, offering encouragement and warmth without pressure. Her parents and siblings would often sit and listen, not interrupting or instructing, but simply enjoying the music. Their presence reminded her that her passion had value beyond public recognition. It was something that connected her to the people she loved and allowed her to grow in confidence and happiness. Word of her talent slowly spread throughout the school. Teachers mentioned her performances to colleagues, and students who had doubted her began to see her differently. Some approached her to ask questions about how she learned, what motivated her, and how she practiced. She answered kindly, sharing her experiences without boasting. She wanted others to know that talent alone was not enough. Persistence, practice, and belief in oneself were the keys to growth and achievement. She realized that her story could inspire others to face challenges and pursue their passions. The girl also began to understand the deeper meaning of her journey. She thought back to the laughter and doubt she had faced at the start. Those moments, though painful at the time, had pushed her to work harder, to focus on her goals, and to develop resilience. She realized that challenges and obstacles were not meant to stop her. They were meant to shape her into someone stronger and more determined. She carried this lesson into other areas of her life, approaching schoolwork, friendships, and new experiences with the same courage and focus she had learned from the piano. Her mentor continued to guide her, offering occasional lessons and advice. They spoke about more advanced techniques, musical expression, and performance tips. But the most important lessons were about confidence, patience, and dedication. The girl listened carefully, knowing that every piece of guidance was a step toward becoming a better musician and a stronger person. She practiced the lessons diligently, always seeking improvement but never losing the joy of playing. As time passed, she participated in more performances and small events, each experience adding to her confidence. Some performances were simple for friends and family, while others were more formal, like school assemblies or local community gatherings. With every stage, she learned something new: how to manage nerves, how to connect with the audience, how to recover gracefully from mistakes. Each event reinforced the idea that music was a journey, not a destination, and that every note played with sincerity mattered. The girl also began mentoring younger students who showed interest in music. She shared her experiences, helping them navigate the challenges of learning and performing. She encouraged them to practice, to embrace mistakes as part of the process, and to believe in their abilities. In guiding others, she discovered a sense of purpose and fulfillment. She realized that her journey could help others face their own challenges, and that sharing knowledge and encouragement was a way to make the world a little brighter. Even outside of music, she carried the lessons she had learned into her daily life. She approached problems with patience, worked through difficulties without giving up, and embraced challenges as opportunities to grow. The laughter and doubt she had once feared no longer held power over her. She had learned that true strength came from within, from perseverance, dedication, and the courage to follow one's passions despite obstacles. One quiet evening, she sat at the piano, reflecting on how far she had come. The room was calm, the only sound the gentle hum of the heater and the soft tapping of her fingers on the keys. She played a melody she had composed herself, a combination of the songs she loved and the emotions she had felt during her journey. The music flowed naturally, effortlessly, as if it had been inside her all along, waiting to be expressed. She smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace and accomplishment. She thought about the students who had laughed when she first requested to play the piano. She no longer felt hurt or anger. Instead, she felt compassion. She understood that their laughter came from ignorance or misunderstanding, not malice. And she realized that her persistence, her dedication, and her courage had spoken louder than words ever could. She had turned doubt into motivation, ridicule into triumph, and fear into confidence. Her music had become a testament to her journey, and she knew it would continue to guide her through life. The girl also began to dream bigger. She imagined performing on larger stages, exploring new musical styles, and sharing her music with wider audiences. She thought about teaching, composing, and collaborating with other musicians. Each dream was fueled by the confidence she had built and the experiences she had gained. She understood that the journey was ongoing, and that each new challenge would be an opportunity to grow, learn, and express herself in new ways. Despite her growing success, she remained humble and grounded. She never forgot the first time she had asked to play the piano and the laughter that had followed. Those moments had shaped her, taught her resilience, and inspired her to keep going. She knew that every challenge she faced was part of a larger story, a story of growth, courage, and the pursuit of passion. And she embraced that story fully, knowing that the music within her would always guide the way. As the years passed, she continued to play, perform, and grow as a musician. She faced new challenges, but the lessons she had learned, the importance of perseverance, the value of practice, and the power of self-belief, remained with her. Each performance was an opportunity to express herself, connect with others, and continue her journey of growth. She knew that the piano would always be a part of her life, a constant companion, and a source of joy and inspiration. Looking back, the girl realized that her journey had been about much more than playing the piano. It had been about discovering her own strength, embracing challenges, and following her passion despite doubt and laughter. She had learned that success was not only measured by applause or recognition, but by the courage to pursue one's dreams and the growth that came from overcoming obstacles. And she knew, deep in her heart, that her music would continue to tell her story, inspire others, and guide her through the adventures yet to come.